My name is Frederick Herman Worsley. Here is a quick documentary of my life. I was born on June 29, 1883 in Chicago, Illinois to Fred Francis and Hannah Worsley. They called me Bud. I was baptized in the Lutheran Church, the religion of my mother. My dad had a dry goods business in a large city with an increasing population. Here is a photo of me in my best clothes. I spent my school days at the cross streets of Jackson and Aberdeen in Chicago. There is now a Target there. This is the building I grew up in at Chicago. The address is 449 West Van Buren. This is where I called home. Joe and I were choir boys from 1890 to 97. The church used the traditional boy choir educational model as a form of liturgical and educational learning. Church of the Epiphany is an historic Episcopal church located at 201 South Ashland Avenue. This is where we sang. It is now on the National Register of Historic Places. When I was only 17 years old, my beloved mother Hannah died at the young age of 39. I was happy we had the chance to visit Norway where she was born. At 14 years old, I started working for the Rock Island Railroad in Chicago and moved out for a time to Texas. I am not in this photo. I then changed railroad companies to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad in 1898. The job took me to Salt Lake City, Utah. At 20 years old, I lived at a boarding home owned by Joseph and Annie Price. Their daughter Eva also lived there. At one of their parties, I discovered that Eva loved green onion sandwiches, which was one of my favorites. Shortly after this, we got married. I believe it was divine providence that joined us together. We quickly started a family and had our firstborn son named Frederick. We called him Bus. Then we moved away from the boarding house and went off on our own. This photo is with my in-laws. I got a promotion to move to Denver in 1906, so our family moved there. Catherine was born in Denver. We lived at 823 Colfax Avenue just down the street from the State Capitol building. I rode my bike to work at the Judge building. We moved back to Salt Lake City about 2 years later, next door to Josie Snow, Eva's sister, so our kids could grow up with their cousins. We later added Price, Joanne, and Sylvia to our family. You can't imagine how much it takes to keep our children going, and while we do the best we can, we fall short each month of enough to fully satisfy everybody. I joined the Loyal Order of the Moose. I held various leadership positions such as the treasurer and activity committee member. Our purpose was to unite in the bonds of fraternity, benevolence and charity, and to assist families in the time of need. I did splendid work there and we had a jolly time. I really loved fun. I built the family a roller coaster right in the house, which went out into the backyard. It was the rave of anyone who saw it. Kids lined up from the neighborhood to ride it. I also encouraged my children to do the dishes on roller skates to make it fun and faster. I loved baseball and joined a committee to petition Salt Lake to get a minor league team. We declared that the national game of baseball was a necessary recreation. We succeeded in getting the Salt Lake City Skyscrapers, and the league survived for 4 years. Our team played against teams from Montana, Idaho, and Utah. I loved sardines on bread as an open-faced sandwich with vinegar sprinkled on them. I also liked grapefruit with powdered sugar. But no matter what Eva cooked, I would say, that was undoubtedly the best meal I have ever eaten in my life. Cheers! Here is a fun trick photography with me on both sides of the table. We did this with double exposure photography. If you can't laugh at life, it's your own fault. I became a grandpa with Bus's first kid. I still felt younger than ever and I insisted to my friends to continue to call me Fred. My grandkids called me Chief. After the Christmas of 1925, I wrote to thank my dad in Chicago for sending us a check. I wish we could come back for a visit, but it is almost impossible as the expense even with passes would set me back 1 month at least, and I simply cannot take it away from my debts. Eva is wonderful when it comes to making money go a long ways, and we are anything but extravagant, but we just simply get by and that's all. In 1932, we moved to a historic home on 218 First Avenue in Salt Lake City near Temple Square. It was within a half-mile to work. We lived here the rest of our lives. Every general conference, family from St. George would come visit and tell stories of the good old days. I had a reputation at work of being friendly, congenial, and having an encyclopedic knowledge of the whole railroading business. I'm sitting front and center in this photo. I worked for the Western Pacific Railroad. In 1935, it went bankrupt because of decreased freight and passenger traffic caused by the Great Depression and had to be reorganized. That was a rough time. I loved family gatherings. Eva made them so special. Now isn't my wife the most beautiful woman you have ever seen? I had a nickname for everyone. I would call Eva, Pearl Diver. In 1936 we had 3 of our kids get married in 3 consecutive months. It culminated with Sylvia marrying Glenn Dixon, who we really liked. Just like that, we were empty nesters. But our home was never empty, since we had boarders live upstairs to get some additional income. We would never turn anyone away, including hobos. Here is the 1950 census. Notice that I had 2 kids moved back in with us. I always had plenty of time for my grandchildren to spend time with me in the workshop. I instilled a love and reverence for quality books in my children and grandchildren. With railroad-like precision, I walked to and from work every day. I was punctual, organized, and systematic. I valued eating lunch with my wife more than getting a promotion back in a big city like Chicago. It was a matter of priorities. Under my tutelage, several high-ranking railroad men have risen through the ranks. I had an encyclopedic mind that recalled rates, dates, and other highly important information with absolute and unfailing accuracy. I never did join Eva's church, but our neighbor Matthew Colley, who was an apostle, said that I was a better member of his church than most of his congregation. This is my plaque at Western Pacific Railroad. I was the chief clerk. I had the record for most years of service at the company. I worked over a half-century of railroading. I retired in June of 1953. I worked at the railroads in Illinois, Texas, Colorado, and Utah. I had been a general agent in 1904, then moved to a city passenger agent in 1907. I also worked as a traffic representative and traveling freight and passenger clerk. My final position was the chief clerk, which I held for a long time. I loved woodworking and cabinet making. The railroad would throw away crates and I would turn around and make furniture out of them. I would design and make toys all year round. I had my workshop downstairs and had unique tools. Everything is easy with the right tool. Some people called me Santa's helper. I also was an ardent gardener. I died on December 11, 1956 at the age of 73 in Holiday, Utah at 7:15 p.m. after long illness. My gravestone is at Wasatch Lawn Memorial Park at Mill Creek. At my service my family requested no flowers. The inscription says, "His gift was happiness." I am Fred Worsley. I was fun, dependable, and loved my family and working at the railroad. Thank you for listening.